Go ahead live, because even that is getting recorded.
Count on 3, 2, 3. Madam, you can start.
Good evening. On behalf of Hyderabad and Bangalore Management Association, I welcome each and everyone on this platform for today's meeting on the topic Next Gen Agriculture, Opportunities for Entrepreneurs. I also welcome our MC members, our past president, our advisors, co-opted members, HMA members, and other participants who are on this platform and also viewing us live. And I also welcome our convener, Mr. Peddi Rajendra Krishna Prasad, our session speaker and past president, S. Shivakumar, our president, Ms. Kavita Rajesh, and also the president who will be joining from Bangalore, that is Bangalore Management Association, Pradeep Singh Kharola. And in his place now, the secretary will take over, that is Dr. B. Amarnath. And with this, I like to hand over the floor to our president, Ms. Kavita Rajesh, to take it forward.
A very good evening to one and all. Thank you, Shivakumar Garu, who has been a past president of HMA. We will be more than delighted to hear from him about the next gen agriculture, because agriculture is a way forward for economic growth, and the GDPs are also increasing through agriculture nowadays. More and more innovation is happening in the stream of agriculture. Thank you, sir. And I also thank Bangalore Management Association President Sri Pradeep Singh Kolara, IAS officer, for collaborating with HMA on this very important topic of next generation agriculture. And also thank Dr. Amarnath Garu, who has been following up for the collaboration. Thank you, sir. Welcome here to Hyderabad Management Association in Hyderabad. Thank you, sir. The theme for 21-22 is the management resilience, impact, innovation, and globalization is our theme for 21-22. So to talk about Hyderabad Management Association, it's a 57-year-old body. It was formed by a dozen dedicated young managers in the city of Hyderabad and Secunderabad who felt the need for developing managerial skills among young executives and spreading the message of professionalism among the practicing managers with the involvement of academia and industry. Activities of Hyderabad Management: we provide a platform of professionals, academicians, and management students to stay abreast of contemporary management practices and even shaping the professionals and with their emerging challenges. We conduct plethora of activities like in the context of evening lecture meetings like what we are doing today, and training programs, panel discussions, seminar, conventions, quiz programs, management and faculty student development programs, etc. And this year we are adding a certificate program in partnership with business schools, industry readiness program, a certificate program to bridge the gap between the campus and corporate. And we are also, for the first time, Hyderabad Management is an all-women office from president to secretariat. And also this is the first program with all girls program IRP we have done. And I should congratulate our team who is taking care of IRP, Jeevan Naidu Garu, our treasurer, and Vice President Ramchandra Garu, and Ravi Kumar Garu, who is the secretary of HMA, and Sri Harsha Garu, who is the convener of this. They are shaping it very well and it is going forward. MSME Entrepreneur Desk has been initiated this year to give consultancies to MSME unit in collaboration with Krishna Prasad Foundation Trust. And we also started International Desk to link the institutions and corporates to international universities for internships and international trade opportunities for corporates, besides tie-ups with different consulates on cultural exchange and technology through speaker meetings. We also have started the social impact desk. We are addressing the problems what are being faced today, because we look at the environmental concerns. Water is talked about in a big way, how to conserve water for the future generation. So our convener Kalpana Ramesh has taken the initiation to adopt a government school, and where we are teaching the students right from the school level to conserve water and preserve water for future tomorrow. So we also are associated with All India Management Association, New Delhi. I'm an associate with HMA to conduct regular and joint programs at HMA. So the first time since we are collaborating with BMA, so I just want to brief about our committee also. HMA is managed by managing committee consisting of 10 elected representatives of of its members and 6 co-opted members from the industry, academia, society, advisors from government and defense and industry and corporates. So this is about, in nutshell, about Hyderabad Management Association. And I also congratulate all the award-winning members this year, and hearty congratulations to everyone. Dr. Aryashri Garu has got the Academic Excellence Award this year. So congratulations, sir, you're there, and we wish you many more to come. So I also request Dr. Amarnath Garu to please brief us about Bangalore Management Association. Later, our convener, Rajendra Prasad Garu, will take this forward. Thank you, sir. Amarnath Garu, are you there?
Yeah, I am there. Good evening to all. I'll join to welcome all the members of both the Bangalore Management Association and Hyderabad Management Association for this wonderful talk. And I bring warm greetings from our managing committee, particularly from our president, Sri Pradeep Singh Karola, is a very senior most IAS officer. Last 2 months back, he has retired, and because of his Delhi some meeting, he was not able to join. Probably in maybe in another 2-3 minutes or 5 minutes, 10 minutes, he may join. So with these few words about Bangalore Management Association, it's a 69 years old organization, and it is managed by committee members, 7 life members, and different institutions. The institution, small institutions, big institution, including the government institutions like big institution like Metro and KPTCL. They are the members of Bangalore Management Association. It is a mixture of all the things. So like from the CEOs to the government CEOs and the MDs of the different companies and ordinary life managers and all that. They are the members of Bangalore Management Association. And the Bangalore Management is a very premier association. Actually started before IMA, and we are also associated with the IMA, and we are happy to see the so many activities of Hyderabad Management Association. And we have also a land given by the government of Karnataka, and we have constructed a MDP center, and happy to see that you have a tie-up with the academic some management colleges, and you're giving a certification program and all that. We are also planning, and definitely for that we'll take your expertise and we'll move forward in that direction. And happy to invite and welcome, join with the Kavita Rajesh ji to welcome our S. Shivkumar, and a very well-known name. And when I say his profile and activities, I immediately called Kavita Rajesh when she has published in shared in LMA. I said, why don't we have a joint program with you? And he is open-heartedly. She has accepted, and we are doing this joint program. And S. Shivkumar is a 8 for the ITC Agro Group, and wonderful, sir. And with these few words, once again, I welcome all of you, and we like to have more association with the Hyderabad Management Association for the future activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it, sir. I would request Rajendra Prasad Garu, our convener, to please take it forward.
Yeah.
Introduce the speaker, Shivakumar Garu.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, good evening and a warm welcome to one and all. And it's my privilege and honor as a convener of HMA MSME committee to invite you all for this today's evening webinar on next generation agriculture opportunities for the entrepreneurs by S. Sri Shivakumar ji. He is our past HMA president and a group head of ITC Agro, and I'm reading his bio for you all. Mr. S. Shivakumar is a group head of Agri and IT businesses of ITC Limited and a member of the company corporate management committee. ITC is a multi-business conglomerate with the interest in consumer goods, hotels, agri-business, paper boards, packaging, and information technology. Mr. Shivakumar is well known as the architect of ITC e-shopper, the pioneering of farmer empowerment initiative and benefits to over 4 million small farmers through customized agri extension and market linkage services, while providing a unique source competitive advantage to ITC packaged food business. Certainly, currently in its version 4.0, ITC e-shopper integrates a range of partners such as government agencies, farm input companies, and agri-tech startups on a common platform to engage with producers and consumers in rural India. Shivakumar ji serves on the advisory council to the Ministry of Rural Development on National Rural Livelihood Mission, the Commodity Derivatives Advisory Committee of SEBI, and on the Management Committee of National Agriculture Higher Education Project of the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. He is a topper of class of 1983 from Institute of Rural Management on an IRMA. Shivakumar ji served a farmers cooperative for 6 years before joining ITC in 1989. Mr. Shivakumar's blog at Shiva's Third Eye at .in. You can also reach it at Twitter on yes_Shivakumar. His blogs are very, very knowledgeable and very informative. I hope everyone can cash on this. Thank you, sir. Welcome you again for this session. Now the mic is yours, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, friends, and good morning and good afternoon to a few friends who joined from other time zones. I am extremely thankful for this opportunity provided by the HMA led by Kavita Garu and the association with BMA as well, with Dr. Amarnath Garu joining this evening. And from time to time, I did speak at various HMA fora, and the opportunity to now once again join all of you and talk about what next in agriculture, and within that, what are potentially entrepreneurial opportunities in the context of the MSMEs in particular, is what I'll cover today. And after walking through the presentation that I have, I hope to make this an interactive session with questions and comments that any of you may have, and you can put them in the chat box, and one of the facilitators will then pick them up at the end, and then we'll engage in that conversation. So let me share my deck.
Karthik?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So this is an image that many of you would have seen just about 3 weeks ago. This is the Honorable Prime Minister launching the 100 Kisan drones towards the end of February. And this is as NextGen as it can get. And within both, using the technology, leveraging the services opportunity that exists, and providing several entrepreneurial opportunities along the way, in addition to benefiting the farmers. Multiple services are possible through drones. One can spray nutrients, pesticides. Interestingly, one can vary the intensity in different parts of the farm depending on the level of nutrition that is there. So in essence, it can provide precision farming. And at a basic level, drones do deal with labor shortage. Counterintuitively, on one side, we are looking for providing more jobs. At the other end, one also sees there is a shortage of labor, and drones do come in way there. And in the thick of the farming season, when farmers walk into the farming fields, often there are risks of things like snake bites, and drones ensure that there is no such risk that may be occurring. And just spraying is only one of the different possibilities using drones. Drones do help in digitization of land records. Drones help in monitoring the crops for advisory to the farmers. And drones also can help in crop yield estimates for usage by insurance companies, governments, as well as market intelligence for the entire agriculture and allied sectors. So just as one activity alone can provide opportunities for those who can invest in drones and provide services to the farmers, there are also jobs for drone operators, potentially for drone repairing services, and even training of drone operators. So when you look at the multiplier impact of what it can do, there are plenty of other possibilities as well. And this is not counting the very manufacturing of drones or software code writers. Now that is the kind of opportunity that NextGen agriculture can provide. Now, I just thought, even before I put my title slide, I'll give a glimpse of one opportunity, because these days of films, one runs into trailers well ahead of the movies actually getting released. So in the same vein, I thought I'll just show a glimpse of what is possible and then walk you through the plenty of opportunities in a somewhat structured manner. So in terms of next generation agriculture and what are the various opportunities that are there for entrepreneurs, the three questions that come to the top of mind when one looks at a title like this are: how is next gen agriculture different from the current gen? And following through, because we are meeting on the platform of management associations, the natural corollary is which technologies and management practices can actually usher in this kind of a change. And of course, moving on to the core expectation of the session, what are the opportunities for entrepreneurs in this new era? So in that way, the film is going to come in three parts: the what and why of the current gen agriculture, when and how of the next gen agriculture, and where are the opportunities for entrepreneurs in this backdrop. So let's get to the first part in terms of what and why of the current gen agriculture. So Indian agriculture, as you would see this half green and half dry tree, is a story of some notable accomplishments and one of several serious challenges also. Over the last 70 odd years after independence, one thing that we can be happy about is that we moved from a situation of ship to mouth in the 1950s to one of food self-sufficiency already a couple of decades ago. In fact, today we are a net exporter from the agricultural sector out of India. Agriculture also is a source of livelihood for nearly half of all the population in the country. And like already mentioned, sizable exports as well. So to feed nearly 17% of the global population and yet be able to export is no small achievement that the farmers and Indian agriculture sector have accomplished over these years. At the other end, however, one big problem that we have is that the farmer incomes are low. You know, the per capita income of a farmer is not even 1/4 of any of the rest of the professions on average at a country level. Low value added, much of what is consumed is in the commodity form, and very small proportion at an aggregate level, just about 10 to 12% what gets processed compared to a much larger part elsewhere in the world. Even more importantly, depleting natural resources like water and topsoil, the threat of climate change, extreme episodes of weather with all rains happening in fewer days or extended seasons of heat and so on. And phenomenal amount of post-harvest losses in food. More than 1 lakh crores of rupees worth food is wasted every year in the post-harvest loss between farm and the final consumption stage. So there's a host of challenges also that exist. Now, these challenges are a result of inherent characteristic of Indian agriculture at one level. Our farms are fragmented with an average farm at a country level is just over a hectare, and therefore bringing many inputs and services is a challenge in itself. And on top of that, the contexts are very heterogeneous. We have over 120 different agroclimatic zones. Then there are obviously individual contexts of the farmers in terms of size of the farm, the knowledge levels, the resource availability, the cash flow requirement, the risk aptitude. Many of these are very different, and consequently, not just is the engagement with smaller farmers, but that level of heterogeneity brings in another level of complexity. And the infrastructure is just about evolving, whether it is physical infrastructure like the roads and the telecom, some of which is evolving, and in the recent past, we have seen a significant evolution with respect to physical infrastructure, but there is still some way to catch up in terms of institutional infrastructure, like things like credit rating, or facilitation of labor markets, and the education and healthcare infrastructure. So many of these other aspects are still evolving, and they themselves have certain inherent complexities. But more importantly, in addition to these inherent characteristics, this the half-dry tree that we have seen is also because some of the solutions that we have deployed over the last 70 odd years have outlived their utility. They were all appropriate at a point of time, but are not as relevant subsequently. For example, solutions that delivered green revolution, which is what brought us that food self-sufficiency I talked about, eventually made Indian agriculture resource intensive in terms of the water consumption. Nearly half of all of India is water stressed, more chemical intensive, and consequently with implications on food safety. And the kind of cultivation obviously has an impact on the climate change at various degrees of temperature that can increase on account of global warming, would mean very different kinds of scenarios going forward, which is adversely impacting ecology. The soil health is worsening, the GHG emissions. So agriculture is both an important cause of climate change, as also is adversely affected because of climate change. And because we were a shortages economy, the whole supply chains evolved as production-driven supply chains. That if one produced more, it certainly is consumable. And consequently, the market linkages were weak and no traceability from the farm end to the consumption end. If one were to look at where is this grown, what practices were followed, how safe is the food, there is a challenge for the consumer to figure it out. And that's because of that traceability problem and weaker market linkages, in turn because of the supply-driven economy that we have built during the stage of green revolution. And also made agriculture very subsidy dependent. In essence, that meant that the crops planted got distorted because large part of the subsidies went to fewer crops. It was important to grow more grains when we were a shortage economy, and some of that continued thereafter also. which meant that we consume more water and potentially produce more grain than what we require. We end up, because of the fertilizer subsidy, more nutrients of a kind that we don't need, even though soil requires different kinds of nutrients. Some of them don't get used because of this distortion. And because power is free in different parts of the country, or water is not charged, which of course were necessary to support the small farmer. But because those things are created in a certain way, it also means we are growing water guzzling crops like sugarcane and paddy in areas where we are already starved for water. So I think these are the kinds of issues that are cropping up, because solutions that were right at a point of time, when they outlive their utility, cause these kind of issues. It's not as if the required inputs and the products to make agriculture succeed don't exist. Multiple stakeholders in the agri ecosystem do have relevant offerings, but the inherent characteristics that I talked about create a hurdle, whether it is information like weather forecasts and news, or knowledge like agronomy practices. So all of these are required by the farmer. Inputs in terms of, say, nutrient, crop protection, chemicals, financial services like credit and insurance, or output buyers to take off the produce and process in turn, and so on, from the farmer at one end of the chain, who produces crops and who requires all these to grow them well. But almost everyone who is bringing these products and services look at reaching the farmer as a last mile problem. We talked about small farms, geographically dispersed, all heterogeneous contexts, weak infrastructure, and so on. And consequently, last mile is seen as the way to deal with this problem, and everyone tries to solve it individually. At the other end, farmers being small cannot assemble each of these as effective solutions for themselves. And consequently, the need for intermediation over the years, and multiple intermediaries actually connect all these products and services at one end to the farmers at the other end. But because it makes sense for each of these intermediaries to operate as a principal to the transaction, the relationship between the providers at one end and the farmers at the other end becomes more opaque and really gets blocked. Now, what does that disconnected link actually mean from a farmer's perspective? It's literally like driving forward on a road, only looking at the rear view mirror. That there's not even a front glass to look at the road, because planting decisions are often taken based on last season's prices. If tomato was getting a good price last season, there'll be more tomato that will be planted, and if the onions fetch a much better price, and so on. And not so much looking at what could potentially be the future prices, because what in the form of a minimum support price at which it can really be bought operates only for fewer crops and in fewer locations. And because of the access through disconnected linkages, the costs of cultivation end up high. Because access to knowledge is a challenge, farm productivity suffers. And because the linkages are poor, what a consumer pays, only a low share of that goes back to the farmer. And all of these consequences also are felt by others along the whole value chain. And there's just a glimpse of what happens to the farmer's income, and which is the reason why the per capita farmer's income is so low. Now, if this is what the current gen agriculture, what about it? A lot to feel happy about, a lot more to feel unhappy about. Why it is so? Now let's look at the next gen agriculture. What does it really entail? How do we get there? And is this the time for next, or is this some time away? And that's what let's look at now. So what and how of the next gen agriculture? So having seen the issues in the past, obviously the number one goal is raising farmers' incomes. Now that has to happen through an empowered participation in a demand responsive crop value chain. In the earlier system, I talked about the production driven supply chains, and if a higher income needs to come, it has to through a more demand responsive value chain and with a somewhat more empowered participation as opposed to the getting at the receiving end through a multiple intermediation that we looked at. The second goal is food and nutrition security. Yes, food continues to be an issue because although we are food self-sufficient, a number of people still suffer from hunger, and more importantly, a lot more people suffer from what is called a hidden hunger or the nutrition insecurity, because amount of food is consumed, but not necessarily that of right nutrition, partly because of affordability and also because of the awareness itself in terms of what is good for nutrition and so on. Now, this means that a choice of appropriate crops is required. Over the years, we moved away from more nutritious cereals to relatively less nutritious grains, more refined grains, and so on. That's how the markets have evolved. And part of the issue in achieving this food and nutrition security comes out of the right crops, as also improving productivity, and not just productivity per unit of land as is commonly used, but also productivity per liter of water, or productivity along the whole chain in terms of the costs of connecting the farmers and the consumers, and so which is what one would call as total factor productivity. And the third goal is conserving natural resources like water and topsoil. The organic carbon content in soil is depleting by virtue of soil runoff and also because of the chemical intensive farming, and water I already talked about. And not only using them judiciously to be able to conserve resources, because while, like I said, we are 17% of world's population, we only have 4% of world's freshwater resource. We have only 2.5% of world's land resource. So that means there is a necessity to use them judiciously. But given the various issues on climate resilience, climate risk, there is a need to build resilience as well in terms of how the unseasonal rains are dealt with, or how extended summers and high temperatures are dealt with, or how warm winters and so on. So I think building that is another very important part of the goal. So if these three are the goals of the next gen agriculture, and this is how we achieve them, we also believe the time has come now because of 4 different trends that provide this kind of an opportunity. Firstly, the changing profile of consumers. Over the years, particularly since the 90s, the incomes of the consumers are increasing. The per capita income globally, the experience is that when it crosses about $1,200 per capita, it's an inflection point for the nature of food consumption. From basic cereals, the shift is also into more fruits, vegetables, milk, meat, eggs, as also in terms of more convenience that is sought in the food, buying or in consumption, as also more concern about food safety and hygiene and quality and the freshness, and many of these aspects, and a sizable segment of the consumers who are, can afford and are willing to pay. And that provides an opportunity to give high value products and plow back a sizable income back to the farmers along the chain. At another level, there is a big export opportunity. The new dynamics of global trade, as it is, and particularly in the last 2 years, after the COVID had disrupted the global supply chains, there is a much larger dependence that people are wanting to have on India as a reliable supplier, particularly in the vicinity, in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, many of who are large importers. And of course, this year itself, India has hit nearly a $50 billion export, riding on this extra global demand that is coming up. And it can easily expand as we step up productivity. And within that, there is opportunity for high value products as well. Now, what we export, only 15% is processed, and our global share of agri and food trade is just about 3%. And of what we produce, just about 7 to 8% is what we export. So there is a significant headroom that is available, with the world also looking for more natural, more healthy food that is being looked at. Then another big trend is the evolution of cutting edge digital technologies. Today, it is possible to think of precision farming a lot more easily than what one could do in the past. Such precision farming being very necessary to deal with the climate change as well as depleting natural resources, to raise productivity, to improve quality. Digital technologies enable personalized advisory to individual farmers. I talked about very heterogeneous context, and therefore, if we just bring a best farming practice for a crop, that is not good enough for individual farmer. On my farm, given my profile, what is the right practice, then what is the global best practice? It requires a personalized advisory on such a large scale, like 140 million farmers, and each one just owning a hectare. It was difficult to provide personalized advisory in the past, whereas something like that is certainly feasible today with the advent of digital technologies. And significant amount of government support for the sector, and with a lot of convergence of resources. And I think I talked about subsidies earlier, which are potentially distorting. A lot of newer support from the government is designed to be less distorted, whether it is direct benefit transfer to the farmers that goes, which is crop agnostic, and therefore it is less distorted. Either whether it is the digital ecosystem that the government is creating through a platform called IDEA, with appropriate data being brought in, and interoperable standards that government is setting in, are things like promotion of FPOs and funds set aside as agri infrastructure fund for the farmers and FPOs. A number of these kind of policy support, as well as readiness to partner with the farmers as well as the private sector, means there is significant amount of convergence resource that is possible. And because of these trends, the next gen agriculture, at which a lot of chipping was happening over the years in the past, it is really the inflection point that one is seeing now that one can be very optimistic about. So what are the technologies and management practices that will actually make it happen? These are the inputs, knowledge, and services that you have seen in the earlier side. And now it is leveraging digital technology. It is possible to align the demand with production. It is possible through many of the trends that I pointed out earlier to collaborate. The public, private, and producer partnerships are happening. Personalization, the traceability to the farm and farming practices is possible. And given the small size of the farmer, it is important that many of these services are delivered as shared services. Like I opened, it's not conceivable for an individual farmer to buy a drone and operate on the farm like it happens elsewhere in the world. But as a shared service, it certainly is conceivable to deliver these services to the farmers and very similarly many other services and therefore shared services. The sharing economy, which has taken the world by storm over the recent past, is something that is now easily adoptable in agriculture as well. And with farmer producer organization connecting all these services can potentially aggregate the products and services from the farmers, disaggregate products and services which are coming into the farmers, and appropriate handholding for facilitating many of these services, irrespective of the level of education and access to resources that individual farmers may have. And that's what really leads to a happy farmer at the end. So there are a number of technologies and management practices that will make this next-gen agriculture possible. So what are the outcomes for the farmers who are connected like this? So starting with demand signals, because we talked about a demand responsive farming. So demand signals on crop type, the quantum, timing, prices, attributes, many of that are now possible. And at the other end, in the production system, it's possible to customize the inputs together with personalized advisory for better yields and lower costs of cultivation, and credit and mechanization services to make farming, and finally quality factored pricing of crop output and a village level buying as the other outcome. So end to end, it is possible to visualize the outcome that we saw, how the farmer was struggling in a disconnected market, what happens when the farmer is connected. So if that's what next-gen agriculture holds as a promise, where are the opportunities for entrepreneurs? So I see the opportunities along the whole value chain. One can look at the value chain in many different ways. You can look at them 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, any number of nodes along the way. But I just summarize here as 5 key nodes from one end of input production to actual farming itself, to then primary processing, and then storage and handling, and then marketing the produce. So from pre-farming inputs to final produce, marketing to the consumers. If you look at these 5 areas, I excluded the large-scale marketing and those kind of areas because the focus is a lot more on the MSMEs as a session, and therefore I looked at what are the kind of opportunities at each of these legs. So let's look at the first part of the chain in the input production, both to deal with the challenge of climate change, deal with limited amount of water resource, as well as to reduce the risk of the farmer. It certainly makes sense to plant wherever it is relevant, the saplings and plantlets using the seed nurseries rather than planting the seeds themselves. And there is obviously a practice for many farmers to grow the nurseries themselves or pool in amongst a few farmers. But seed nurseries as a line of business is something which is evolving rapidly. And so for a cluster of villages, it is possible to support a seed nursery under some level of climate control with tray seedlings and so on, so that this is evolving as an entrepreneurial business activity, and farmers benefit by a more robust planting material with better productivity that can come. And with more natural and organic, safer food also being looked at, bio inputs is another opportunity. While there are bio inputs which also get manufactured by larger input companies, there's plenty of bio input production which is possible. So near villages, when it is done, the carbon footprint is also lower, the transportation costs are also lower, and it is also possible to customize to the relevance of that particular zone. And so there are certain opportunities in the input production of this kind that one can look at. Now moving to the second leg in farming. Within farming, farm-related areas, I see 4 different sets of opportunities. First is advisory services to the farmers. Whether advisory services are based on information, like you have weather forecasting. Linked to weather forecasting, there is agronomy advisory on what to do as a survey that can be rendered. Or it could be based on testing, things like soil tested, and based on soil testing, what are the appropriate level of nutrition that needs to be used. Or based on images, the image recognition and processing to diagnose what the problem of the crop is, and therefore what crop protection needs to be taken, is an image-based agro-advisory that is possible. Our crop monitoring from remote sensing, which is also becoming popular now, with whether it is combined with weather forecasts, when and how likely is a pest attack movement likely to reach my farm. So as a separate or an integrated service, all of these are possibilities in terms of how all this can be combined, and linked to that, an advisory service can be provided to the farmer. Are there entrepreneurial activities in farming itself? There is a fair amount of activity being now done in climate-controlled farming in greenhouses, particularly for cultivation of exotics, where the economics make better sense compared to open-to-sky farming, particularly the microgreens and cherry tomatoes and strawberries and certain kind of capsicums, and so many such vegetables which can be grown closer to the towns, and that is an opportunity in itself. It can be by individual entrepreneurs investing in these kind of greenhouses which are springing up around the country. as one is visualizing, it is possible that there is an infrastructure provider for multiple entrepreneurs who can grow, and such large-scale investments can be done by government or by large private sector, and then leasing out to individual farmers to then grow crops within these greenhouses in the respective chambers. So those kind of possibilities are plenty. Then farming as a service. I mean, these days, anything as a service is becoming common, and farming as a service is also something which is an opportunity where there are models evolving where, given the small size of farmers, we are now seeing collective farms of multiple farmers' land getting aggregated with a lead farmer providing necessary investment and other resources for things like irrigation and as may be required, other sensors and so on the farm, with individual farmers then cultivating their own piece so that the physical labor that is required is also available, and capital investment and resource as required also is available. And a very interesting farming as a service is also emerging in urban areas. A number of people in the cities and towns have balconies and rooftops and are common areas, but people don't have the knowledge or time for actually growing crops. So there are entrepreneur service providers emerging who are providing this as a shared service to multiple such colonies. That's another kind of farming as a service, so that you are growing your own crop and eating, certainly of vegetables and microgreens, not so much for other crops which require large acreages. Even for milk and poultry, this is being done. So that's another kind of model within farming itself. Then mechanization services, we saw the drone in the trailer, equipment hiring and is possible. Like drone, many other equipment is used on the farms, right from land preparation to harvesting stage, and all such equipment hiring is possible. So custom hiring centers are emerging, are actually providing them as full services, not just hiring a drone for half an hour, but actually ensuring that the appropriate nutrient is sprayed after having taken an assessment of the crop and the soil through the sensor, and then a variable rate at which the nutrient, or as the case may be, other kind of crop protection chemical is sprayed. So it can be a full service of that kind. There are many models of a simple hiring to full service that are possible, and depending on which service, the economic size could be different, whether it is service is unit cost work by providing a service to 20 farmers, or you require 200 farmers, depending on the nature of equipment and the type of service being provided, and therefore what kind of a fee can be charged there. And crop estimation services, I just pulled it off separately because it's a service being provided to other parties and not farmers. Insurance companies to settle claims require crop estimation, which is more micro. I mean, today, because such micro estimation services are not happening before digitization, there is settlement at a block level or a district level, which either is a problem for the insurance company or it's a problem for the farmer, depending on which way the estimate falls above or below the actual crop and individual farmer. So tomorrow, with this crop estimation services, that is possible. Governments require crop estimation services for many purposes, for planning and many other supports, the services being provided, are very useful for market intelligence, for output players, input sellers, and even for consumer goods companies in terms of what is the likely crop, and therefore what is the income, and therefore what is the potential purchasing power. So a number of products can be created out of crop estimation service itself as the other opportunity. Moving to the third piece of primary processing, what can happen near farm? De-seeding in certain crops, like tamarind, for example, de-stemming in crops like chilies, decorticating, as it is called, like shelling in case of groundnuts. So a number of value addition activities can happen near farms, and whatever I'm calling as entrepreneurial opportunities can be done by independent entrepreneurs, can be done by FPOs themselves as business activities on behalf of the farmers. So immaterial as to who takes up, these are all the value addition opportunities which provides value to both ends. If you're decorticated a groundnut pod and transporting only the kernel inside, the cost of transportation is much lower. You can sort them by size and quality at the farm itself, or where this primary processing is taking place, and then pack. Drying is another area. I mean, if you drive around in the harvest time, you would see a lot of agriculture crop being dried quite often on the roads, by the side of the road. And this is what is really causing the unhygienic output quite often. But it is possible to provide shared service of drying, which can make it faster and reduce the risk if there is some kind of an unseasonal rain, and also is certainly more hygienic. So it's a number of, I've just given just an illustration, a number of primary processing activities are possible near farm itself. Then in the fourth leg of what is the storage and handling, facilities on hire, much like equipment on hire I talked about earlier, it is possible. Pre-cooling of vegetables and fruits before the farm heat is reduced and taken into a cold store requires some kind of a mobile pre-cooling service with small size reefer vans supporting the supply chain. So again, this opportunity is expanding. Our integrated storage services, like facilities, could be warehouse itself, warehouse on hire. Similarly, a slightly variant version as an integrated service is a negotiable electronic warehouse receipt. If the farmer actually puts the crop to someone who is providing the warehousing services and actually also get paid an advance, willing to pay an interest on that and pay the storage charges, then the farmer is free to wait to sell when he or she believes the price is better, rather than being under pressure to sell soon after harvest. So integrated service has that kind of an opportunity as well. And that also unbundles a mandi transaction. You know, in a mandi, when the farmer takes the produce to sell, it is seen as a selling transaction. But what is bundled into it is price discovery, decision to sell, deliver the crop, and collect the cash. So essentially 4 different transactions are bundled into one transaction at a mandi. So quite often, farmer may want to, like I gave the example of NEWR a little while ago, would like to deliver if there is no warehouse space at home, or may want to take loan on this and may still not want to sell until the price is better. Or in some cases where FPOs have started transacting on the futures exchange, may have even pre-sold the crop or may have just bought an option also. So it depends on any of these things getting unbundled so that each one of them happens only based on the need rather than a perforce combination of all 4 transactions rolled into one, which is what is creating another problem for the farmer. Finally, moving to marketing, there is a market linkage service possible. These are the days of the B2Bs and the B2Cs and all of that. Certainly, an F2C, the farmer to consumer, is eminently possible in many cities. This is already operating with communities of consumers getting connected to clusters of farmers, connected through the various digital apps on various models, whether it is a subscription models or as bought model and so on. So fresh produce can reach the consumers based on the orders. There's an opportunity and many variants of this model, including various kinds of price advantages for group buying and pre-ordered buying, so that the farmers can also plant the crops based on the harvest schedules. So it is possible to coordinate much closer the entire demand to production through appropriately structured apps. Rapid quality assaying through near infrared and otherwise image spectrography and many of these now technologies which are possible together with machine learning and artificial intelligence to be able to rapidly assess the quality of an output. So in the past, there is a manual quality testing, quite often invasive, or products also need to be damaged before a quality is assessed. What is the protein content or oil content or the freshness or the ripeness or any of these parameters that the consumer is looking for. So without damaging the product much more accurately and much more rapidly, it is possible to now do rapid quality assaying. And when these are integrated into pricing transactions, there is more fair transactions that can occur as opposed to the traditional method of C and fixed price. And therefore, it will always go in the favor of those who have better bargaining power. And that's the opportunity that exists on marketing front as well. So across all the 5 nodes of the value chain, there are opportunities enabled by technologies. There are services are unrelated to technology. It's a whole host of opportunities that I have painted. So in essence, the opportunity galore, so to say, from below a mini con, one can look at starting with a village level entrepreneur at one end to as large as the hectocon opportunity with a $100 billion kind of possibility, with anywhere like the unicorns or decacons, which are now more common these days. If the localized services to the farmers and farming itself can be potential mini cons with a sizable business in a given area. Things like market linkages and other farm services have potential for being unicorns, and demand responsive and traceable chains have the potential to get as large as decacons. And the real big ticket problems that still need to be solved in the sector that have the potential to get all the way to hectocons include solutions for climate resilience. Today, the single biggest problem for the agriculture sector, starting with the farmer and everybody else along the chain, is what happens with unpredictable weather, with rising temperatures, rising sea levels, and so on. So therefore, appropriate technologies for climate resilience or other services. A number of interesting models are emerging in that area as well. And other big hectocon idea is also in solving the perishability of the crops. If a fruit or a vegetable can just stay on the plant in the crop for another couple of weeks, it can make all the difference between throwing away the crop because it is not getting remunerative price, even to take it to a mandi, to potentially getting a significantly higher income. Because within days, we see consumers complaining of 100 rupees a kilo vegetable and farmers throwing away crops on the roads, and therefore solving perishability can come from many different angles. So that's another big opportunity too. So that's a full range of opportunity that I can paint for you. And thank you very much. I'll leave it there and open up for questions and comments. Thank you.
So there are not much questions as such in the chat box. I think all the appreciations were there. It's like,
I'm sorry, can I
Yeah.
interfere and ask a question, sir? I'm
Hello?
sorry.
Hello?
Hello. My question to
please go.
Shiva, sir. Yeah, am I
Yeah.
audible, sir? Am I audible?
Yeah, no,
You're
it's
breaking, but now better.
My question to Shiva, sir. Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I'm very thankful and I'm greatly acknowledged with your thoughts, your insights and your current assessment with future technology incorporation. And indeed, it was a good one. Yes, I would like to just add on, like the farmer can, the farming, for example, if it has been, if now it has been distributed and now every person may have a 1 acre or a half or something like that. So in that case, nowadays, apart from farming, growing crops, I think another part of income for the farmers, which we have to look into and which we have to develop, I guess, it is livestock, like cattle, like you make chicken or poultry, or even you take the sheep farming. So what's your thinking about that? And I would be taking, because being an internship, that is also a part of what I feel and what I look through to help farmers and for mutual growth. I think growing livestock, and there is a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurship in that, with helping farmers and for mutual things. And I would like to know what's your thoughts into that.
Yeah, that's a absolutely critical point. Yes, everything that I said in the context of agriculture is equally relevant for livestock and poultry also. It's just that I did not add those words also. But you are very right in pointing out the same technologies or the services that are being talked about are absolutely relevant, because now it is possible to look at tagging individual animals and assessing their fitness and health and well-being, and accordingly decide the milking and other animal husbandry activities. Same in case of great entrepreneurial activities within poultry sector itself. There's a lot of IoT now being used in poultry to ensure that the birds appropriate temperature, humidity, and all of these are appropriately maintained, and feed is properly given, and so on. So I think it's very important. In fact, today when we talk about agriculture, a very large part of what we call as agri sector GDP actually is coming from the livestock sector. The both the milk yielding cattle, including goats that you pointed out, as well as the small poultry and so on. So that diversification is very necessary, both from a consumer demand point of view. That is the kind of demand width which is available. And this also makes it a lot more resilient. The farmers, the diversification of incomes also reduces the climate risk, because one crop will have a much more risk implication as opposed to an integrated crop come livestock come to that degree, very similarly integrating with plantations as well, because we have a serious need for agroforestry, the ground cover that is required, the energy needs that can be served through growing certain high calorific plantation along the bunds. So many such possibilities are there. Yes, diversity, not just the conventional crop, but along all these lines is very important. And these services, these technologies are almost in all cases equally relevant there also. Except that, for example, things like drones, you may not be able to use in poultry farms because birds get frightened and run helter-skelter. So other than that, many other things are certainly possible.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Sir, this aquaponics versus hydroponics opportunities. Any?
Yeah, see, obviously it is a lot more capital intensive, and but there is technology has evolved for certain kind of crops. The climate controlled crop that I talked out for exotics, some of them are relevant for aqua hydroponics also, particularly when I talked about microgreens and things like strawberries and some of these, the aquaponics is more appropriate. And it is also possible today to control many of the parameters at home. Sorry, I'm saying at home because I have aquaponics greenhouse at home and in the greenhouses of the farmers to do that. But given the large scale upfront investment, wherever it is more high value products only, it is more viable and not for crops which are otherwise possible in the open to sky agriculture.
How about the bio-waste management? Any opportunities, sir? Bio-waste.
Yeah, so that's an area that I did not touch upon, but I think it's a very important point also. There is a lot of crop residue that is there in the traditional agriculture. Typically, farmers made use of every part of the crop and looked at the integrated value. As crops became more monocropping and some of the agri waste is not as well used. But today, both with the evolution of the biofuel usage, there is certainly an opportunity for expanded use on that count. As also the technologies which are taking shape now for not only as energy, waste getting used into packing material, because the plastic is also now, there's a lot of concern and there is a shift out of plastic, particularly single-use plastic, multi-layered plastic. And in many of those areas, the biodegradable packing is possible out of waste. And so therefore, that is certainly an area as well. So at a smaller scale, opportunities, while many of these are large-scale high-tech investments, the smaller scale opportunities are similar to the point that I noted out for agri-produce. The aggregation services, disaggregation services, some of them will be relevant for agri-waste as well. So simple things like briquetting biomass for usage in biomass-fed boilers. So now, because of the shift away from the conventional fuels for sustainability reasons, many of the factories now have biomass-based boilers, and more of them are shifting. And in a number of states, there is those kind of registrations as well. So therefore, a local level mid-sized entrepreneurial opportunities include bio-waste getting briquetted and then taken to these boilers also. So there are those kind of opportunities as well. So there's that is certainly an important area also that you pointed out.
Like, what are the organic farming opportunities, sir? Like feasibility and export oriented or domestic market? Organic farming nowadays is happening.
Yeah, so one of the trends that I talked about from a global demand perspective, global includes India also, is safer and healthier food, and whether it is out of organic or natural farming, far less chemicals and so on. So opportunities exist. There are two kinds of challenges that one have to deal with to succeed in this. One, like the general drift of my presentation, it needs to be demand responsive. You produce organic crop without appropriate demand being tied up, then you won't fetch the right prices. Then you end up selling at as a same common commodity. Quite often, the second problem is to do with the transition period, the yield losses that could be there, because it certainly is possible to get good yields in organic or natural farming as well, but one has to be aware of what are the appropriate bio inputs that are required, and some of them could be farm and region specific. And by the time that understanding happens, there is a potential yield loss in the initial period. So, so one needs to take care of that initial yield loss with the demand tie-up at the other end. But certainly the opportunity is good in organic and natural farming also. But these kind of hurdles need to be taken, because a number of areas, while I talked about opportunities, while they look like a huge number of opportunities, an important aspect is really in terms of how does one look at economics of each of these, whether it is based on scale. For a given size of investment, you require a particular scale. Only then you can fully utilize the capacity, whether it is an equipment investment or whether it is advisory collaboration that you may have set up or whatever. So what is the appropriate economic size? Quite often, it's also a challenge because like I mentioned, market is partly distorted because of several free services.
Yeah.
If you say there is an advisory, and if the business model is charge per advisory, then you are competing against a free service being provided by somebody. So how do you demonstrate value and be able to actually sell the service? Or you should have a business model or a revenue model where advisory can still be given free, but out of the output that you buy, there's a price premium that you can get. Or out of the recommended inputs being sold, that you get a fee. So how is the revenue model being designed to operationalize each of these opportunities is an important consideration. So I think that business acumen is absolutely critical too.
Sir, you rightly said earlier that is value-added products are being in demand now. And this value-added product, probably organic products from India and the medicinal product, medicinal plant, medicinal products, they're also playing a very important role in Indian cultivation, besides the regular traditional crops. Is got a demand in export oriented more on this part, like this value added production, nutrition point of view.
Yeah, there is both in the global as well as the local markets also. There is demand exists. For example, a lot of medicinal and aromatic plants is an emerging opportunity. Now, if you look at a base level, you pick up a crop like an ashwagandha or tulsi or any of these. A basic crop like a commodity, you have any part of the plant which is sold, but there can be a next level of value addition, which is an extract. And then there is a higher level value which comes out of an extract with a certain level of efficacy in terms of what level of bioactive exists in that. So the level of value addition can go higher and higher. And once the demand side is tied up, whether in the global market or in the local market, the higher value can then be fetched. Some of them can be done by the farmers at an FPO level, and some of them will need to be where the potential investment is much larger, may have to be done by a separate entrepreneur or a federation of FPOs if it is to be done on behalf of the farmers. So the models exist in both ways. And the value addition scale can be very different also, whether it's same thing for milk. Milk as a basic product, there is a certain level of demand. But even within milk, there's a traceable milk produced by a certain kind of animal fetches a different price. And then through processing, there is a certain level of value addition. Our milk, for example, today, the conventional model of milk collected in cans in the villages and then brought to a bulk milk chilling center at a cluster level with all those cans being brought. So typically has more time which is taken. Now there are new technologies where there's a rapid milk chilling happening in the village itself. So as the farmer pours the milk, it is poured on the milk chiller and the milk is kept chilled. And therefore the degradation that otherwise takes place in the transportation in the cans and up to the bulk milling center, that deterioration doesn't take place, lending itself to much better value addition. So that can fetch a better price. So the level of value addition can also be different depending on where the market is and what kind of infrastructure that you can put up to capture that kind of value.
Interesting, yeah. I think in your presentation, you mentioned a lot of opportunities, sir. I think the youth got to explore all those opportunities, especially that startups, the drone application for agriculture side and database management for agriculture side, analyticals on agriculture side, AI and IoT. There are so many opportunities are there. I think if we can really explore and reach to the farmer, I think plenty of opportunities are there in this direction.
So, number of aggregator organizations are providing services, whether at our agencies like NABARD, our government agencies, our various industry associations, which can help create the draft project reports, facilitating training, providing bank linkages. I think certain aggregation and incubation services are required so that these opportunities are really made use of by entrepreneurs, and so that they really become viable and scalable also.
I think there are no more questions, sir. I think I request our Kavita garu? Ravi Kumar ji?
Rajendra Prasad garu?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Ravi Kumar ji garu? Yeah. Sir, I request you to give your closing remarks, sir. I think there are no more questions, sir. And it's so elaborate and very informative presentation by Sri Shivakumar garu. I think you can give your closing remarks and conclude the thing, sir.
Great. Thank you so much, Rajendra Prasad garu. Such a informative and comprehensive presentation. Thank you, Shivakumar garu, for a nice evening and sharing time with us. Thanks, Rajendra Prasad garu, for organizing this event and getting Shivakumar garu on board with HMA.
Yeah.
So they say, agriculture, the old economic engine is going to be the sunrise industry of the future. And I think your presentation has given all the reasons to believe this. However, the challenge is, sir, I would call it as an impossible trinity, where increasing the farmer's income, preserving the nutrition, and conserving the environment, all three are difficult. Any two can be achieved at the cost of third. And it also has an economic conundrum where increased farm income means if the produce, the cost of the produce is increased, then that will have a spiraling effect on the economic aspect, that is your inflation. So, I mean, there are so many overlapping and intersecting areas, but I think adoption of technology and some of the ideas that you have shared today can really address that, or maybe add that variable which can help us address all three, or help us address the impossible trinity. I think with those remarks, let me extend my gratitude to you on behalf of the HMA family. It is Hyderabad Management Association, but I fondly call it as Hamara Management Association. And again, compliments to Rajendra Prasad garu for championing a lot of interesting session, of which today's session is one of them. And the entire team of HMA, well, I would say supported, encouraged, and steered by Kavita Rajesh garu, our president, CEO, and the entire secretarial office for facilitating things, Karthik for IT support, and all the participants for active participation in the program. Thank you so much, and looking forward to have more future engagements, sir.
Dr. Ravi Kumar, I would like you to add even Bangalore Management Association.
Okay, great. So let me thank Bangalore Management Association also, and rather welcome them for this partnership. And I'm sure going forward, we'll be able to do or champion more collaborative programs. And today's world, they say collaboration, or it's an era of co-optation. So we'll be doing more program, looking forward to that. And compliments to the entire team of Bangalore Management Association. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Request everyone to complete the poll, please.
The poll link is shared in the poll option. Please submit your feedback. That will help us in refining our activities and adding more to the set of activities that we do.
Yeah.
Okay, Karthik, we can close this session.
Gita madam, is the poll done?
Just let me have a look. Just a minute.
Yeah.
22 people have taken the poll.
Okay, fine. Okay. Yeah, good number. 80% is done. Ravi sir, can I end the meeting? You are in the mute, sir.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you, Shiv.
Thank you, sir. Wonderful lecture.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good night
Closing
to
the
all.
meeting. Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.